Breaking news. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's the 7th day of the new year. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. The year is very young, but quite a number of things have happened already. And I want us to just quickly touch on what we saw happen in the United States of America yesterday. Unprecedented, interesting turns of events from the historic November election, and it also a mind-blowing one which culminated in a protest and reported shooting right in front of the Capitol Hill building. You must have seen the front pages of the paper this morning. Trump supporters defy U.S. democracy, overrun Congress. Exactly what everyone is talking about. Indeed, shocking development from America, one of the oldest and largest democracies of the world. The big question right now, or rather the interest and the focus, is the role that the U.S. president has played in all of this, from him calling the election a fraud to nudging the protesters on via his tweet yesterday. Eventually came up with a video asking the protesters to go home, but many are saying that this is a major dent on U.S. democracy that has survived centuries. So we begin to look at all of these issues vis-a-vis the development of politics around the world, and also the fact that Africans are watching and also paying attention to all of this development. So there was clash with security men, protesters disrupted Congress certification of Biden's victory, all of this happening only 2 weeks before the 20th of January, where the Biden-Harris administration is expected to be inaugurated. Our eyes are on the development in U.S., and we're sure that we'll be discussing that also in the course of this program. But let us turn our attention back to Nigeria. Recall that sometime in August 2019, land borders were shut in Nigeria as part of government-sustained efforts to check smuggling and other illicit cross-border activities. That happened for some 16 months before President Buhari in mid-December 2020 approved the immediate reopening of 4 major Nigerian land borders, while the remaining borders were directed to open on the 31st of December 2020. Now, for many, that particular policy played a critical role in the much talked about inflation that plagued 2020, and also the fact that our GDP contracted consecutively in 2 quarters, and reported that we entered economic some recession late last year. However, perhaps the most interesting story we had yesterday, well, apart from the news from the U.S., is the fact that the Nigeria Customs Service says it did not only generate more revenue than the previous year in 2020, it also surpassed its revenue target for the year of the pandemic. And we're talking about a whooping 1.56 trillion naira, representing a surplus of 181.35 billion compared to the 1.38 trillion target it had for the year. We'll be talking about the phenomenal revenue drive of the Nigeria Customs Service. And I'm joined this morning to also look at some of the issues around this development by the Customs Public Relations Officer, Joseph Atta, who joins us live from Abuja. Good morning and Happy New Year to you, Mr. Atta. All right, I can hardly hear you, and I'm hoping that we can work on that audio quality to be able to get your submission on all of the updates that we've been following, particularly a press release that we got from the Customs Service yesterday, talking about exactly how the Customs Service was able to achieve that feat. Now, before the commencement of the border drill on the 20th of August in 2019, revenue generation was between 4 billion to 5 billion naira. But we're told that that has increased to between 5 billion to 9 billion naira daily. And they have attributed this to quite a number of things, including the diplomatic engagements that took place during the partial land border closure, which, according to the service, yielded some positive results. It means, therefore, that there is more intelligence sharing and gathering taking place across the borders. However, our attention is also drawn to how quiet most of the borders have been and what appears to be a delay in obeying the presidential order in mid-December. Our correspondents were there just a week after that presidential order, and it would appear that the only opening in the border was for people traveling, but not for goods and services. The officials there at that time said they are yet to receive memos from Abuja in that regard. Let's attempt to get back to Joseph Atta in Abuja. Good morning and thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about the revenue drive very shortly, but let us get some clarification as regards the border reopening. We noticed that the presidential order in mid-December wasn't immediately adhered to. We recall visiting the Seme and Idiroko borders a week after that pronouncement, and they were only open to travelers. The customs officials there said they were awaiting a memo from Abuja. Only yesterday, the Controller General in charge of Sokoto and Zamfara had what they call the symbolic reopening of the Ilela border. What is responsible for the delay?
Well, a very good morning to you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You can go ahead, Mr. Atta.
Okay, that's good. First, let me correct that we have only one Controller General of Customs. Those who are in charge of area commands are called Customs Area Controllers. As regards what you refer to as delay, it's just a normal process. Once there is a presidential statement, a presidential pronouncement, of course, there are statements that follow, official directives that will go to the implementing agency. And as soon as we got that, the borders are open.
All right. So we hear also that certain importers are opting to rather use the ports because of what they say is a higher duty that they pay through the land borders. Have you heard this complaint? And what do you think is responsible for that? Well, we seem to have some challenge with that connection. We hopefully will get back to it subsequently in order to hear the customs PRO clearly on in this regard. There's a lot of complaints coming in from importers, especially aftermath the reopening of the land border, which indeed was greeted with lots of optimism in Nigeria, given how the economy along the border areas have been crippled, following the order to have them shut for over a year. A particular importer who chose or opted rather to be anonymous had said, and I'm going to quote him, when you go to China to go and import and you bring the goods to Seme and pay duty, the same customs official you pay the duty to will hand you over to the Nigerian customs to pay another duty and other fees attached. And by the time you do the calculation, the cost of importation through the Seme border would be higher than that of the Lagos port. And we seem to have a lot of new conditions after the federal government's directive, one of which they say is that any container coming from neighboring ports must be handed over by the customs service of the country where it's coming from. And we need to clarify what these non-negotiable transit protocols are for importers and how they are going to impact on, economic life around the borders, aftermath this decision. We also have to talk about what the Nigerian government, or rather the customs agents, are doing in responding to what we now know as the African Continental Free Trade Area, an agreement which Nigeria has not only signed but ratified. And we understand that that kick-started on the 1st of January 2021. The idea is to create perhaps the largest market size in Africa. And we expect to also hear from him as regards what the customs agents, the customs services doing in that regard. Now, do not forget that all of this would impact either positively or negatively on Nigeria's economy, especially at a time where we are rebounding and recovering from the impact and the effects of the pandemic in the outgone year. Don't forget that the GDP has contracted for 2 quarters consecutively. The federal government is optimistic that we're going to come out of the recession in the first quarter of the new year. I've spoken on this show with some financial analysts who said it would take a miracle for that to happen, and that they're looking forward to perhaps the second or the third quarter before they can see that happen. It's also very important at this point in time to clarify what has been done over 16 months to better equip government agencies and particularly security agencies at the borders. The reason why it was short initially was what they call cross-border illicit activities. At that point, we started reporting that small arms and ammunitions are being imported illegally into the country. The implication of that on the Western security challenge has been talked about. The fact that as we speak right now, there is still a ban on contrabands, especially rice. Now, does Custom has the capacity, so to speak, right now to enforce all of these? Well, the good news, however, since we're waiting on Mr. Atta, I can just quickly identify for you some of the progress that the service says it has made. And they're talking about the fact that now they seem to have what they call more scanners, installation of more scanners at all entry points, which is expected to enhance border security and also boost national trade facilitation. And it's important also to note that apart from the known borders, we are told that there are many other illegal borders. We'll be finding out how all of these places are manned in a minute. Let's take a short break. And when we return, we find out more from the Customs PRO, who is joining us from Abuja. Stay with us.
We're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
And thanks for staying with us. We're talking about customs activity in the outgone year vis-a-vis the very, very huge amount of revenue that they raked in the year of the pandemic. We have Joseph Atta on phone. He's the public relations officer for the customs in Nigeria. Thank you for staying the course on the program. I was asking you earlier about what many consider the new directives aftermath the reopening of the land border. Some importers are saying now that they would rather use the ports because they have to pay what they have to pay as duties more, at the land borders. How do you react to this?
Well, let me start by saying that the Nigerian Customs Service operates the common external tariff, which is applicable in the 15 member states of the ECOWAS. So within Nigeria, there's nothing like the different tariff for land borders and tariff for seaports. Tariff remains the same. Where somebody may think of increase or whatever is a situation where you import into, for instance, Cotonou port, and probably you are subjected to paying some taxes there. Of course, I know that there is what they call a trade tax. Even that is if the goods is passing through a particular port to a neighboring country. If you have to pay the trade tax there and then come back to the land border and pay the same amount that you would have paid through the seaport, I think it will make economic sense to import through our seaport. But that's not to say that we operate different tariff. It's the same tariff.
Well, the pressure and the traffic at the seaport is also a huge challenge, and one would have thought that creating or making land borders very accessible and affordable would also have reduced the pressure at the seaport. But there are talks of new conditions, after this opening. Are there new conditions for importers, this time around?
Well, the fact that the land borders are opened is not an invitation to importation or smuggling of all sorts of things. all extant laws remains in force. For instance, those things that are prohibited, when we talk about things like rice, frozen chicken, we think of things like arms adaptation, illicit drugs, used clothing and all that, they remain prohibited. What we have gained as a result of the land border closure is the product of the diplomatic engagements that took place. For instance, Nigeria as a nation has extracted firm commitments to the implementation of the dictates of the ECOWAS protocol on transit. Now, also, during that period, there were some tripartite meetings that took place between the customs administrations of Nigeria, Niger, and Benin Republic. The product of those engagements have led to the establishment of what we now operate as a joint border patrol, meaning that right now there are joint border patrols on both sides of the border. We have our joint border patrol here, Niger will have their own, Benin will have their own, and the leaders of these patrol teams have connectivity to share experiences, share intelligence, and to ensure that what I don't want to come to my own side, please help prevent it from coming to my own side. And what you don't want to come to your own side, I will help prevent it from coming to your own side. So that's a huge achievement from those engagements during the period of the closure.
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement has now been enacted. We understand that it began operation on the first day of January this new year. How is customs adjusting to this reality? Because we're looking at the aim of creating a single market for goods and services in Africa. Some are asking that, do we expect to see a continental customs union to help streamline all of these bureaucracies and streamline trade in anticipation of a really huge and massive importation, so to speak?
Well, the dream of a custom union remains far ahead. I think it will be important that we concentrate on what we have now. Of course, we have the ETLS, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, which we have some issues. The ECOWAS protocol on transit, which generated some issues, leading to the border closure. And as I said earlier, the diplomatic engagement have kind of prepared the way, have smoothened the way now. Because if at the level of ETLS, we are having issues, if those issues are not resolved, how are you even going to implement the bigger one, the continental one? The regional one was a problem. How are you going to? So what has taken place now is that the shutting down of the border by the Nigerian government created a platform for interface, diplomatic engagement, where all issues were put on the table and have been reasonably considered and addressed, as a result of which the land borders have been opened. So I would say the ground is reasonably smoothing for the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I also have you know that the Nigerian Customs Service took time to look at all the issues, the likely threats that ACTA is going to bring to the nation. And safeguards have also been developed, talking about possible abuse of rules of origin, dumping, talking about influx of substandard goods, negative effect on revenue generation, and possibly even security implications when you allow free flow of goods and persons. So having dissected and identified 7 possible threats, safeguards have also been carefully articulated to address these perceived or possible threats. We are all our trade actors, all other member states are able to operate the AFTA strictly in line with the laid down rules and regulations.
So the land borders were closed in August of 2019 to check smuggling and other illicit cross-border activities. According to the finance minister, the issue of smuggling of rice into the country has reduced drastically. I want to believe that is the same for the smuggling of arms and ammunition. But then, what has happened, what has changed in the past 16 months to further equip customs and other security agents at the borders such that we build on these gains and ensure that these gains indeed are sustained?
Well, what has happened is that within the 16 months of closure, as I told you, those engagements led to a lot of revelation. Back home, that joint operation meant that we had more manpower, more working tools, more non-intrusive equipment, because you are talking about bringing resources from customs, from police, from army, from all the Nigerian security apparatus. Coming together meant that we reached where hitherto as a service could not have reached. We gathered some intelligence that possibly we single would not have. And all these things have been collected, analyzed, and properly dissected in such a way that we are in a position to know what to do and where. And more importantly, you know that the federal government has just e-customs, which will lead to installation of non-intrusive equipment in virtually all our entry points. We're talking about 135 modern scanners. Ministry of Finance and the CBN have also indicated interest. Of course, Ministry of Finance have purchased 3 already. CBN have expressed strong commitment to intervene by providing 4 scanners and going ahead to establish a central monitoring center for all the scanning sites. It's a strategic intervention from CBN, and so all hands are on deck to ensure that going forward, never again will our borders experience what we experienced in the past.
Mr. Ita, how do these scanners work, and what form of impact will they have on better securing our borders?
Well, you know that in the absence of scanners, you will be talking about physical examination. Just imagine yourself examining a 40-feet container loaded with cartons of goods physically. You know how tedious it will be. The time factor, maybe you take 5, 6, 7 hours to examine it, whereas you could have just within 5 to 10 minutes. For trade facilitation here. I think who works in trade facilitation, federal government is so passionate about easing ways of doing business in Nigeria. And if the dream of turning Nigeria into a desired investment destination is to be achieved, must be given time of place. So scanner is that key working tool that we need to facilitate trade in Nigeria. It will boost economy, it will boost security, because what you would have done, probably seen using your human eye, the scanners will help you to detect such things, and this can have huge positive impact on national security and economy. So, scanner is very, very key.
So, according to your press release from yesterday, Nigeria is expecting to have 7 functional scanners in the next 6 months. How adequate will this be to man all the borders?
No. Yeah, the statement said within the next 6 months, we'll be having about 7 scanners. 3 already from the Ministry of Finance and 4 coming from CBN. These are interventions away from the 135 scanners that the e-custom project will bring on board. So these are, call these ones John the Baptist, if you like. They are just forerunners to the bigger ones that will come in. So
all right.
we begin to install this before
Yes.
the other ones also come in.
Let's talk about the revenue drive of the Nigeria Customs Service. It appears that customs is perhaps the biggest gainer of the land border closure. Your revenue moved from 4 to 5 billion naira on a daily basis to 5 to 9 billion naira daily. And we understand that you even surpassed your projected revenue for 2020. How did you pull this through?
Well, you see, one of the reasons that led to the closure of the land border is the fact that the activities of our neighbors and the porous border that we have created a kind of incentive for smugglers and, of course, the crime of smuggling to take place. And it made border security very, very challenging for the Nigerian Customs Service. So when the borders were closed, and with the increased manpower and working tools that we had at our disposal as a result of coming together of security forces, meant that smugglers could not have it their own way. Some of them had to reroute their goods now to the seaport. And of course, seaport having more equipment and all that to examine and all that, that naturally impacted positively on revenue. Revenue now raised. Vehicles that would have been smuggled through the porous border here and there had to be imported through the seaport. And that meant payment of revenue to federal government coffers. So all those things kind of swear off the revenue generation for the year. And don't forget, we have a leader, the Comptroller General of Customs is a man that is passionate about doing anything that is doable to block revenue leakages. Beyond the border closure, we have strategic things like the strike force that are not supposed to be, they don't go to the road by any way to, impede free flow of goods. They don't put credible information about anyone that may have beaten the checks at the land border. They stole. So all these things culminated into creating an unprofitable situation for smugglers who have no option than to do the right thing. So we had increasing number of people doing the right thing. Of course, we still have the bad eggs that are posing challenges, which we continue to deal with.
You talked about diplomatic engagements during the partial land border closure. What are the outcomes of this engagement, and what are the plans to have them implemented to sustain all of these progress made?
Well, one key outcome is the establishment, or right now the operationalization of the joint border patrol on both sides of the border. And to me, this is very, very key, because if the other side of the border have a joint border patrol there, we have a joint border patrol here, and the leaders of these teams have connectivity where they can meet, share intelligence and all that. Prohibition list of Nigeria is given to them. Their own prohibition list is also given to us. This is a very, very strong and positive achievement coming out of those engagements. Because if these teams at both sides do what they are supposed to do, we would have been coming very, very close to having a near perfect border security. And of course, the diplomatic engagement led to the extraction of firm commitments from our neighbors, never again to break the ECOWAS protocol on transit. That goods that are on transit through their country coming into Nigeria must arrive at our border stations in their own original state, meaning that the series will not be broken. There will be no issue of opening them and transloading them. And I think these are huge achievements. Not talking about a lot of seizures of things that could have compromised security and economy that were made during this period. So the 16-month closure was worth the while when you consider its impact on national economy, national security, well-being of Nigerians, and more importantly, future border security.
Absolutely. We look forward to better outcomes in the new year, particularly as we watch carefully the impact that the the openings of the borders will have on the economy. But before we let you go, one question that has been constant with our online viewers is the update on the recruitment exercise. I believe the 2019-2020 customs recruitment exercise, which was stalled in the outgoing year because of COVID-19. You mentioned particularly at some point that you could not release the names shortlisted for interview because of the pandemic. We're hearing that the final list is out. What updates? Can you confirm this for us?
Well, it's unfortunate that our recruitment exercise had to take the length of time it has taken. Nobody envisaged that. The Controller General of Customs is pained about the fact that an otherwise simple recruitment exercise had to take this protracted period. This is even more so considering the fact that we are in need of more manpower. We need we could do better with more manpower, especially those at the junior cadre. So we are waiting for the nearest opportunity to get the list out. So let me confirm to you that if there is any list circulating anywhere, it's not from the Nigerian Customs Service. What they did last was the aptitude test, which was done successfully through JAM. We have the results. The list are almost ready, or they are just on the table of the Deputy Controller General in charge of human resources. And at any earliest opportunity, they will be invited for physical interview and check.
So you're saying that all the lists online are fake?
They are fake. They are fake. And for crying out loud, the Nigerian Customs Service of all places cannot choose Facebook as a medium of recruitment. Something as serious as recruitment cannot be done on Facebook or on WhatsApp. And when you engage these fraudsters, eventually they will request for some funny fee, what they call processing fee, to be paid into a private bank account. There are questions I always ask. If these people are really genuine, why is it that they won't let you see them face to face? If it is from the Nigerian Customs Service, why should the transaction take place outside the premises of the Nigerian Customs Service? Ask yourself, who did you know, or who have you known, your friend or your relation, that got properly recruited through that process? And how much will it cost you to move to the nearest custom office to verify the authenticity of such claims? So these are fake. When the genuine one comes, we will use the traditional media. We will use our platform, and you will just know the difference between what is original and fake will be so clear.
Absolutely. We have to let you go now, but is there a time limit? Because this has taken so long a time, and we saw life continue during the pandemic. You made more money during the pandemic. I mean, interviews can be conducted online. Is there a time frame within which customs intend to round up this recruitment process?
I have used the word at our earliest opportunity. How we wish this opportunity happened yesterday. We went for Christmas break thinking that we were going to wake up in 2021 without any news about COVID-19. Here we are, hearing about a new variant of COVID-19. I pray that the opportunity to get this thing concluded comes earlier than I and you will even wish.
Absolutely. Joseph Attah, thank you so much for your contribution. Public Relations Officer, Nigeria Customs Service. We'll look forward to having you in our studios one of these days so we can really talk more on all of these developments. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll take a break now and return with more. Stay with us.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
And thanks for staying with us. We'll open the phone lines now for contributions. Yesterday it was shocking news with images from the United States where thousands of protesters breached America's Capitol building, forcing the Congress to break the affirmation of the November presidential election results. And we saw congressmen and women having to be evacuated from the building after Trump supporters came in their large numbers, pushing past the police barricade to gain entrance into the building, where debate on the disputed state of Arizona election began moments earlier. And as the crowd grew outside, tension across the country went with it. We saw the mayor of Washington, D.C. imposing a citywide curfew for 6 p.m., saying no one will be allowed outside in the city. Security operatives are also, we told, had a tough time containing what has now become a very huge concern. All eyes on America, all eyes on the Trump administration. Recall that there has been a rift between him and his vice president, given the position that Mike Pence took as regards what will transpire at Congress. One person was shot at that particular clash, another wounded inside the Capitol building, and the White House, we're told, have activated U.S. National Guards to quell protests. Go home in peace. That's what President Trump is telling rioters. So it was chaos in the United States yesterday as President Trump supporters defiled democracy, breach Capitol, and clash with police. They say that it is a huge setback to the democratic gains made in the past century. So indeed, shocking developments from America, perhaps one of the oldest and largest democracies in the world. We have a caller in now. Hello, good morning. Nelson Akujimi called in from Ikeja, Lagos. Good morning.
Yeah. It's a pleasure being with you on this program this morning.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yes, I just want to express my regret, my disappointment, just like every other lover of democracy, about the show of shame in America, inspired by a sitting president who was democratically elected. It's the height of, electoral malfeasance. If you allow me that way, that somebody has conducted an election in which the people are spoken, and till date, the man has been looking for every means by hook and crook to upturn the democratic wish of the American people. And what happened yesterday could be regarded as a coup d'etat, just like Orubebe attempted to do in Nigeria in 2015 when he stormed the National Collation Center in Abuja, when the process of an election exercise was already on. And we all know that this election process has a means of seeking redress if you are aggrieved. And even while calling back his supporters, to go back home, President Trump was still, making this hollow claim of being robbed. And, we have always said it loud and clear that people in any exercise in a civilized society must not take the laws into their hands. They must subject themselves, to the rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement provides a window for seeking redress if you are aggrieved. And for you to claim to have been robbed, you have been asked repeatedly, can you please substantiate these allegations? Because it is not enough for you to claim you have been robbed without, providing proof of where and when, the robbery took place. So what happened in America yesterday was a big slap on democracy, was a big slap on America as the bastion of Western democracy. And it has gone a long way, to undermine democracy worldwide. Because unfortunately for us all in the whole world, what has happened in America yesterday, some persons, are taking notes. And we are afraid that our continent, our continent Africa, that has suffered from this type of, mishap. Because you recollect, this was also what the former president of Côte d'Ivoire, Laurent Gbagbo, did, where he rejected the result of an election in which he lost. And, violence, was the consequences in which people lost their lives. And the result was that the man was taken to the Hague, the ICC, the Hague, and he was tried and convicted. We only hope that when President Trump, is forced out of office come January 20th, because from all the indications, by what he has done yesterday, by resorting to mob action, to claim a mandate that was not given to him by the American people tells you clearly that this man, is everything undemocratic, both in person, in character, and in conduct. And we hope that Mr. Trump, at the expiration of his tenure, the American government will surrender him to the Hague so that he will be tried for the lives that were lost yesterday and the property, as well as the desecration of the Congress by the mob who stormed the Capitol, where the Congress was supposed to perform a constitutional responsibility, of which, they were assaulted. The Congress itself was assaulted. Because by going into the Congress without authorization, by taking over the Congress to prevent the Congress from conducting its legitimate responsibility, amounts to a coup d'etat, and it is condemnable in all ramifications.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Nelson Ekujimi Corden from Ikeja. Thankfully, the protests only halted the Congress certification session, and we believe that resumed eventually yesterday. There's been lots of reaction trailing what transpired yesterday, and President-elect Joe Biden addressed the nation from Washington, calling on pro-Trump protesters to pull back and also allow the work of democracy to move forward. Let's bring you the sights and sound from that speech.
It's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite.
Very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home.
So eventually the U.S. president asked the protesters to go home, but we have followed his reaction right after the historic November election, calling the whole process a fraud. And even to the later hours of yesterday, following his tweets, asking protesters to stay back at the Capitol Hill, but ensure not to be violent. But that's a bit different from what the vice president tweeted yesterday. Mike Pence tweeted, quote, "This attack on the Capitol will not be tolerated, and those involved will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." End quote. Our phone lines are open to take contributions on this matter. Mr. Kujimi earlier mentioned about the implication of this on Africa. On the contrary, I think that Africa should be proud. Nigeria, for instance, we saw a transition of power in 2015 from one party to the other, seamless, effortless. The outgoing president at that point, immediately after the election, picked his phone and called the president-elect, congratulating him. I think that Nigeria, on the contrary, and I believe that African countries would rather want to take that position of a big brother, quote unquote. Let's take a call very quickly. Good morning. I think we lost that. We lost that call. We'll get back to. Keep trying. We'll get back to your call very shortly. We have some tweets yesterday from the U.S. president showing on your screen, and he's asking for support for the Capitol Police and law enforcement, saying that they are truly on the side of the country. Well, although it took a while to address the protesters who stormed the U.S. Capitol in quickly escalating protests, the president also, we saw, broken silence in a series of tweets. He actually did mention that as vice president didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect the country and the Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts. So it does appear now that there seem to be some friction between the president and his vice as regards this. He called on the protesters yesterday eventually to stop the siege and go home. According to him, you have seen how we were robbed. Go home in peace. Well, many say that all eyes are on the 20th January and that the system works so seamlessly such that doesn't matter what the outgoing president really thinks. The inauguration of a new government is very likely to happen on the 20th of January. Yakub has called in from Dokpemu. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead with the contribution.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'm proud to be in Nigeria because what really happened in 2015, it is unprecedented that some people will even predict that Nigeria will go astray, but it was never come to play. But I was saying that I think whatever Donald Trump says, the USA citizens have spoke. And then I even listened to him, your chief now, that he says that everybody should go home. That is a very good thing to say. So because there's always been another. If you like, you can come back in 4 years' time to still contest for that very particular post. God willing, if they still need him, they will vote for him. If they not, they will not vote for him. So Nigerian citizens should learn that anything happen in this country, we always cry that USA is the development country and all that. So I'm proud of Nigerian that we are still together up to today, and then I believe we'll keep moving on and correct all our knowledge. So Nigeria should learn again that they should be able to give us electronic voting. That is the answer to our problem in terms of election in this country. Good morning and God bless you.
Good morning, Yakub. Thank you for your contribution. And it appears that the Democrat is not only taking over the White House, the Democratic Party of the U.S., President-elect Joe Biden is also on the verge of taking control of the Senate. We're told that that is happening as a result of some of the results coming in from Georgia. Raphael Warnock, a pastor from Atlanta, was projected to have won one of the seats. And it boils down to the fact that Americans are sharply divided. If you look at the popular votes, the fact that the outgoing president polled over 70 million, the second highest in the history of elections in America. It behoves on the incoming administration to be able to bring together the sharply divided citizens of that great country. George has called in from Ikeja. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Nifemi. Nifemi, what is going on in the U.S. about election? We must know that it's a racial war. If you look at the genesis of the problem and the dynamics of it, you know that they're not actually fighting about who won the election, but that power has shifted from those who they expect to be in their hands. You know, it's the blacks that made Biden to win this election. I followed the Georgia senatorial elections yesterday and the day before. And it's the blacks all over the countries that made this victory possible. And we know they have this, especially when Trump came with his racism policy. It is the blacks that have always been the victims. It was because of the blacks that he failed all to address the COVID-19 problem. Because he saw that it was the blacks that had so it's liberation, and the other ones are annoyed that they have lost out. That is just the truth of the matter. We know that a new dawn comes to America. What I expect Joe Biden to do when he comes in is to ensure that that rogue president, excuse my word, is not in circulation.
All right, thank you very much, George, for your contribution. It's amazing how sharply divided Nigerians are also as regards the U.S. election. There are some who believe that Trump is God's choice for the U.S. and others, just like George called him a rogue president. The issues of 2020, from the way the outgoing president handled the pandemic in America, the country now being the epicenter of the pandemic in the world, and also the issue of the Black Lives Matter seem to have toppled the election in November on Biden's side. The big question is Nigeria watching and learning all of the lessons it needs to learn as we count down to the big one in 2023. A big thank you to all of you for watching this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, God willing, with another exciting one. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Good morning.